Ever stop and think about all the work and technological advancements that led you to being able to watch this video? There's a lot more to it than just clicking on a link. Get ready to dive into the world of television. We can all agree that the entertainment industry has gone through some dramatic evolutions in the past century. Across all mediums, things have always been in a state of flux as we incorporate new technologies into our lives that impact the way we consume our entertainment. The realm of television in particular has seen huge advancements over the years, with monumental changes in the last decade alone. The dramatic advances in technology have also affected television's place in our culture, going from a household staple to now, when it is more readily accessible than ever. Today on Feed My Curiosity, we begin a three-part series on the evolution of television in our culture, from its inception to the possibilities of the future. In part 1, we will explore the history of television, from when it was invented to when it became a household item in the late 20th century. Nowadays, it's difficult to imagine a world without TVs, when radio was the primary source of entertainment. Although there is something nostalgic about a family huddling around a home radio to listen to the latest programs together, it's not surprising that people soon craved images to go along with their entertainment. Before televisions functioned electronically, they were actually mechanical. Various iterations of these machines date back to the early 1800s, when they would mechanically scan images and then transmit them onto a screen. German inventor Paul Guilab developed a method using a rotating metal disc with holes in a spiral pattern. This method was later expanded by Scottish inventor John Logie Baird and American inventor Charles Francis Jenkins in the 1920s. These machines were extremely rudimentary, but helped pave the way for electronic televisions and future innovations. A significant threshold in the history of television was crossed with the invention of the electronic television, which was first demonstrated in 1927 by American inventor Philo Taylor Farnsworth, who was only 21 years old at the time. He had actually grown up in a house that didn't have electricity until he was 14. But while in high school, he began concocting a system that would capture moving images in a way that could be coded into radio waves and then transformed back into images on a screen. The Russian, Boris Rozing, had experimented with similar concepts of transmitting images, but Farnsworth's invention that scanned images with a beam of electrons is widely thought to be the direct ancestor to modern TVs. The first image he transmitted was a simple line. Later, when asked from a potential investor when they would start seeing money from the invention, Farnsworth famously transmitted the image of a dollar bill. People working on mechanical televisions continued making adjustments to their devices in the 1920s, but those machines were clearly becoming obsolete. By 1934, all televisions had been converted into the electronic system. The 1930s were difficult years in the US due to the Great Depression, and that had contributed to a slowing development of TVs. By the end of the decade, though, Americans were introduced to the technology that would help shape American culture in the latter part of the century. The Radio Corporation of America, or RCA, dominated the radio industry at the time in the US by owning NBC and soon invested $50 million in the development of the new electronic televisions. The company hired Russian-born scientist Vladimir Kosmos-Dvorkin, who had participated in Rozing's experiments of the previous decades, to lead the efforts towards the new televisions. As part of the 1939 World's Fair in New York, RCA decided to televise the opening ceremonies and a speech from the president, Franklin D. Roosevelt, who became the first president to appear on television. This was a monumental moment in the US, but Germany and England had been broadcasting since the mid-1930s. World War II demanded many countries' resources, which halted the production of televisions. In 1946, televisions went on sale again, but radios were still the most popular broadcast medium. By 1948, however, almost 2 million homes had TVs, and the number of licensed television stations soared. The 1950s saw televisions become more affordable than ever, and the industry continued to grow. The spread of TVs to average families led an increase to programming as well as newfound advertising opportunities, all leading to the era that became known as the Golden Age of television. By 1953, about half of American homes had a television, changing mass media forever. In 1965, that number grew to 94%, and by 1998, it was 98%. with half of US households owning more than one television. Television has always been a bastion for entertainment programming, beginning with variety shows of the 1950s that led to situation comedies, dramas, and later sitcoms. The medium was branching out into a wide array of entertainment that gave diverse populations of people a shared experience that shaped the everyday culture. Beyond the world of entertainment, however, television was also instrumental in the world of news and politics. The role of anchorman became a staple of news media with figures like Walter Cronkite and Edward R. Murrow. Television, as a visual medium, made its first impactful mark on the American political landscape in the presidential election of 1960. John F. Kennedy was running against then Vice President Richard Nixon. Their election saw the first ever debates, which were broadcast on television. Audience surveys showed that those who listened to the debate on radio thought Nixon had won, but people who watched the debate on television thought Kennedy was the better candidate, as he presented himself with poise and grace, while Nixon, who refused to wear makeup, looked less presidential with his unshaven face and poor posture. This was the turning point in the campaign that led to Kennedy's election. It also marked the beginning of an era where presidential candidates were required to be more charismatic for television audiences. After that election, television news became the primary source for information about significant cultural events, from the Civil Rights Movement to the Vietnam War to the Watergate hearings to the O.J. Simpson trial in the 1990s. In just a few decades, television had gone from experiments and laboratories to an integral aspect of American and global culture. It's hard to turn back the clock and imagine a life without television. From entertainment to news and politics, television has impacted our consumption of these three parts of society in profound ways. It has become a forum in which we share some of our most important stories and information, giving us common ground that didn't exist before. In addition to offering a shared experience for people, television has also allowed for an unprecedented number of viewpoints to be expressed to the greater culture. While diversity of ideas is great, it has become more important than ever to be mindful of the messages that are being portrayed in different programs and always be wary of ulterior motives. It is only then that we can become an informed society of original thinkers. Stay tuned for part 2 in our series of the evolution of television, where we will examine its role in our current culture, from the technological advancements brought on by the internet and the advent of streaming and its changing impact on our lives. If you've liked what you watched or have any more suggestions, hit like and comment below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button too. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you next time on Feed My Curiosity.